going to now talk about 401k matching, which is probably something you've heard of. I'd originally planned to have this video or this lesson in the prior video, but decided to push it back because what we're going to be talking about today with 401ks, 403bs, 457bs, it's also connected that it's really not that much new material, so I thought it might be good to include this today. So 401k employer matching is something that you definitely should care about because probably you're going to have some sort of matching available to you, and you definitely want to know how it works. It's not so complicated, but if you don't understand how it works, that's a big problem because you might miss out on free money. Essentially, the way this works is when you make a contribution, the employer might provide additional 401k contributions to you for free. And the thing about this is sometimes people make the mistake of thinking these 401k matches are like the employer is, taking money away from your pay and instead putting it towards the 401k match. And that's not the case. This is like free money. You're not going to get this money unless you contribute to a 401k. And the specific rules on how this match works can greatly vary from company to company. So I'm just going to try to give you like a few typical examples of what a 401k match is. And then you're going to sort of need these skills when you go start applying for jobs. When you're interviewing or when you're given a job offer, you definitely want to ask about 401k matching because there's a good chance you'll get more than one job offer. And the match that each company provides may be the deciding factor. So in terms of choosing a job, you need to think about 401k matching. And then, of course, once you have the job, you need to understand how to best apply the rules of the 401k that they offer to you. So I'm just going to jump right in and give you an example. Last year, I went to the Georgia College Career Fair, which happens in the fall. Like there's a couple of career fairs, but there's a really big one in the fall. Definitely a good idea for you guys to attend that. And there was a company there called Cultura that offered a pretty typical match. So I bring them up just to give you a real world example of a company that I know hires Georgia College students. And this is a really common 401k match. In fact, I think this is probably the most common 401k match that you find out there. And it's pretty good. In regards to 401k matches, I would say there's probably a third, maybe 40% of companies don't offer anything. So if you're getting offered something, that's normal, but you should still consider it a good thing because there are firms that don't offer anything at all. And then among the remaining 60% that do offer a 401k match, probably about half of those set it up this way. And then the rest of them can get pretty complicated. So a 100% match on the first 3% of salary, very simple. So let's, just to make the math simple here, let's imagine you have an income of $100,000, right? A nice easy number for us to work with. The way this works is if you contribute $0, so you do not set up a 401k contribution at all, then you will receive no match. The 401k match only works if you put money into the 401k. That word match there refers to your contributions. And that's usually how it is. Occasionally, some companies will give you money in your 401k regardless of what you do, which is nice. But most don't because they're trying to save money and they don't want to contribute unless you do. Put it this way, the employers want to sign you. But if you don't care about the 401k, then they're not going to push and fight for you to put money into your 401k because they have to match on top of that. So most companies will basically force you to put money in order for them to match. And that keeps the company from having to match everybody's 401k. They only match those that are actually putting money into their 401k account. So if you do this, which a lot of people do, a shocking amount of people do, you won't get any match, which is really a disaster because they will 100% match your first 3%. So you definitely want to put some in, right, to get that free money. All right, so you could instead do a $1,000 contribution. And in this case, if you put $1,000 in, then the result is that you're going to get a $1,000 employer contribution. So you put $1,000 in, your employer puts $1,000 in, and that leaves you with $2,000 in full contributions, okay? So your traditional 401k would have $2,000 in it, even though you only put $1,000 in it, okay? And the match always happens immediately. So let's say in the first month, you put $1,000 in, you'll get the full match right away. And if you get to a point where you've gone past the match, well, then you just don't get any additional match, but you're still welcome to continue to put money in, all right? You should hopefully already tell what this person should put in at a bare minimum, okay? How much money can they put in to make sure they get all of the match? They need to put in at least $3,000. So a lot of people will actually take this strategy, which I get it. It's not a bad strategy. They might just put in a $3,000 contribution. All right, so that's the amount you put in. And then the employer is going to fully match that because they match up to 3% of your income. This 3% right here, okay, they'll match up to 3% of it. So if you've got $100,000 in income, they will match up to $3,000 of your contribution. So you would thus have $6,000 contributed and you've received the full match. So if you ever hear anybody saying that I contribute to my 401k just enough to get the full match, it's a real common statement to make. This is what they're talking about. When you guys get real jobs, you'll talk to your friends that are working there about their 401ks and everything they're doing, and you're going to hear a lot of people say this. I put in enough to get the full match. That's what they're referring to. All right, because after you've gotten the full match, it's still beneficial to contribute to a 401k, right? Because of the tax ramifications that we talked about in the prior videos. But obviously, when you're getting the full match, that is like super advantageous to make sure that you're making those contributions. So if I find out anybody in this class has got a job and they're not contributing to at least get the full match, I'm going to go back and give you a 0. I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to try to do it. Because you need to make sure you're getting your full match, because why leave this $3,000 on the table, right? Not only is this $3,000 your employer is giving you, but they're also giving it to you in a way that's very tax advantaged. This money doesn't get taxed, right? This money would go into your 401k, traditional 401k, and not get taxed until you withdraw it way into the future. So it's really nice to make sure you get the full match. If you go any further with this, well, then the match just basically peters out. So if you decide you're going to do $10,000 in your 401k contribution, by the way, we're going to talk about something called a 457B. This is how much I do, $10,000. For me, if I was going to do this at this company, I would only get the $3,000 employer contribution on top. So once you've hit the 3% here, you've basically exhausted the benefits that the company is giving you. And so you would have $13,000 in contributions. One kind of side note here, if you're really wanting to be aggressive about your retirement, and by the way, 401k max contribution, hopefully you remember from the last video, is $19,500. That might sound like a lot to put into your 401k, but I have students. In fact, I had a student just contact me a couple weeks ago. He contributed the full $19,500 in his first year of work. He's living at home with his parents just for a couple years. First year, $19,500 into his 401k. If you're wondering, you could still put in the $19,500 here and receive the $3,000 match. It turns out that in regards to the 401k rules, that $19,500 cap refers to how much you put in. The government only allows you to put in $19,500, but they let the employer match a lot as well. So you could theoretically put in far more than $19,500. There is some cap, but we're not hitting it. You would have to have like an unbelievable match that doesn't exist. So it's something like you can put in as much as $19,500, and your employer can put in something like 10 grand as a maximum. So you could actually contribute more than $19,500 to your 401k once you combine your employee and employer contributions. All right, so just to make sure we got this, here's kind of a pretty easy quiz style question. Let's say that your income is $44,000, right? Kind of a typical starting income for a Georgia college student. And you wanted to make sure you got the full match. So what is the minimum contribution you can make to receive the full match? Okay. And so to figure that out, essentially all you need to do is multiply the 44,000 times 3%. The value that we get here when we multiply these together, the 1,320, represents how much the employer will put in if you put in the same, okay? So if you put in $1,000, they'll match 1,000. If you put in $1,200, they'll match 1,200. To continue getting the match, you can do that up until 1,320. So if you put in 1,320, they'll put in 1,320. If you put in 4,000, they'll put in 1,320. If you put in 19,500, they'll still put in 1,320. All right, so they will match until you hit that 3% threshold, and then they stop. Okay, so that Cultura, that's just one example of a 401k that's out there in the real world. Give you a couple more here. Let me give you the weirdest one I got when I went to the career fair. We have quite a few econ majors that work for this company, Insight Global. They do a $250 match, which is not very good, is it? $250 match regardless of what your income is. Better than nothing, but you don't have much of an extra incentive to put money into your 401k. I would always I don't know much about this company. It seems like they're a fine company, but I would always be a little hesitant to work for a company that gives such small 401k benefits. You know, this is better than nothing, but you might think a company that's only matching $250 to the 401k might not so much care about retaining employees. Their benefits maybe beyond their 401k match maybe aren't so good. It kind of seems like they're pinching pennies here a little bit. Maybe targeting employees that aren't thinking long-term, aren't thinking about their 401k. So, you know, better than nothing, better than no match, but still not great. Here's one that's very good. And this will add a little wrinkle, a very common wrinkle that you'll see to these 401ks. Auto Owners Insurance, another company that was at the career fair last year. They offer a 100% match on your first 3%. All right, that sounds exactly like the one we had before from Cultura, but they also offer a 50% match on your next 2%. This type of match is actually really common. I see this all the time. You know, I have a lot of students coming to me asking about, job interviews and offers that they've received, and stuff like this is actually really common. So it's not hard. It's not hard to figure out what you need to do with your income, but it does just complicate things just a bit. Okay. So let's again think about a nice, easy number to deal with. Let's say you have a $100,000 income. You're not getting that first year out of college, but when you're 30, 35 years old, you probably will be making about $100,000. So for a nice chunk of your career, this is pretty close to what you'll be thinking about. All right, so you got an income of $100,000, 100% match on first 3%, 50% match on the next 2%. So let's say, for example, that you contribute let's say $1,000, okay? In this case, if you contribute $1,000, see, you're in the full match. You're in the 100% match part of your income. If you earn $100,000, the first $3,000 will receive the full match. So the employer contribution would be $1,000, and you get $2,000 in full contributions, okay? Let's now think about what the most is you could contribute. All right, if you contribute $3,000, that's kind of an inflection point of sorts. That $3,000 will put you at the top of the 100% match. And so this would be just like Cultura. You'd get $6,000 from your $3,000 contribution. But if you do that, of course, you're not getting the full match because we haven't taken care of this. All right. So what this 50% match on the next 2% means is for any additional money I put in here, right? If I put in another $1, they're going to match it at 50 cents. Okay? So again, if I put in $3,001, I'm going to get $3,000.50 in employer contribution. So if I want to get my full match, I've got to put in at least $5,000. I'll get $3,000 on the first $3,000 like I did before, and then $1,000 on my next $2,000 in contributions. And so that would be me contributing in order to get my full match, to get as much of the company match as I possibly can. All right. Again, a lot of people would choose just to put in 5,000. Sometimes people will tell me, I don't know why. They would say, I don't know why I would ever put in more than 5,000. Well, remember, there are still tax benefits. So if you contribute to a traditional 401k, you don't pay any income taxes on it now. You don't pay any capital gains taxes or anything while you're investing. So there's a reason to have money in a 401k always, but obviously it's extra good when the employer is going to put extra money on top of it as well. So for this person, if they could get $9,000 a year into their 401k and do that for 30 years, that's definitely enough for retirement. For a lot of people, that'd be more than enough. Okay, so just a couple more things to point out. I'm going to talk about something called vesting. We could deal with some math in regards to vesting, but I'm deciding not to do that. Instead, I'm just going to introduce you to these ideas. When you get your first job or when you change jobs to a new company, a lot of times your 401k match is not immediately available. So vesting basically refers to a waiting time before a 401k match is made available. Some companies will immediately allow you to completely contribute to the 401k and get the full company match. That's very lucky if you can find that. That's called immediate vesting. So essentially there's no waiting period to receive your match. This is kind of a sneaky way for companies to basically delay your salary for a little bit in time and save them a little bit of money. If they hire you and you only stick around for 3 months, a lot of companies aren't going to offer you any kind of 401k match because this is not typical. Immediate vesting is out there. It does exist, but chances are your first job will not look like that. Okay? Instead, it'll look like one of these next two. Most likely, it'll look like the second one here, which is called cliff vesting. So if you're on your job interview and you ask about the 401k and they say, we give a 4% company match, but it's cliff vested up to 6 months. What they're referring to is you don't get any match until some period of time, and then the match becomes fully available to you. All right, so with cliff vesting, you get no match until the vesting period ends. And a lot of times that'll be 1 year. I've had a lot of students who come back to me and ask me questions about their 401k because they get their first job out of college, there's no match, and then a year later the match shows up and they'll contact me basically saying, I want to make sure I'm thinking about this correctly. So it takes a lot of time for that matching to kick in. 1 year is common, 6 months is also common. Longer than that is pretty atypical. The other style you might see, and I'm kind of surprised by how often I see this, graded vesting. And this is where you're gradually vested over time. This is definitely the most complicated one, but it's also pretty common. Cliff vesting you see most, graded vesting next, and then this immediate vesting is the third most common based on at least my experience, my anecdotal experience. So the way this might work is you might get a 25% of the match in the first 6 months, 60% of match in the next 6 months, and then the 100% of match thereafter. And what makes this complicated is remember the type of 401k match you have to begin with can already have some kind of strange wrinkles in it. Like the example we just saw, right, with auto owners insurance, 100% match on first 3%. 50% match on next 2%. So that would still apply, but you'd only be getting 25% of that. So the 100% match on the first 3% would become a 25% match on the first 3%. And the 50% match on the next two would become a 12.5% match on the next 2%. So the math can get weird. We could go in and solve for those types of examples, but it's kind of really pointless. If you understand how these things work, I trust that when you get your first job, you'll be able to spend a little bit of time and make sure you're thinking about things correctly. All right, so that's vesting. One more issue, and man, this is a really important final issue. And I'll be honest with you guys, the first time I taught personal finance, this is something I didn't know. But with dealing with students that had a 401k, he basically, I had a student, he opened up his 401k to me and said, look what's in here, look at my 401k. We started talking about it, and then I came to a realization of something I didn't already know. All right, here's a question for you. What about Roth 401ks? All right, what you should know is most of you are going to want to contribute to a Roth 401k when you start your first job, right? But here's the thing. Any match you get from a company on a 401k will be traditional, okay? So, to receive the company match, you can contribute traditional or Roth. Alright? So you can go traditional 401k or Roth 401k to receive the company match. Alright? Here's the part I didn't know. Whenever you make your contribution, traditional or Roth, the match will always be traditional. The employer match will always be traditional. Be careful on the quiz question. I'm going to ask one here that's a little tricky about this. Alright, this is something I think you need to know. Because again, most of you are going to want to do a Roth 401k because you expect your incomes to go up over time. So first job, you contribute to your Roth 401k. You should know that you're also going to have a traditional 401k contribution if there's an employer match. So this makes it basically harder to put money into a Roth 401k. And it also means that you will automatically be diversified. If you're thinking, I would like some Roth and some traditional, maybe that means just make a Roth contribution and let your employer match carry over the traditional 401k. All right. So just to be clear how this would work, let's say your income is $50,000 and you've got a 2% income match. Or let me restate that. You've got a 100% match up to 2% of salary. A typical but maybe not so good match there. Then what this would basically mean is if you did a Roth 401k contribution of let's say $5,000, right? That's 10% of that income there. So if you put $5,000 into your Roth 401k, you would also end up with a traditional 401k contribution from your employer of, in this case, the full match, which the full match would be $1,000. All right. So if you open up your account and you look inside, this is what you're going to see. You only contributed to the Roth 401k, but your traditional 401k has money in it as well. And I can't even imagine the hundreds of thousands of people that contributed to the Roth 401k and didn't expect this and freaked out trying to figure out what was happening. It's fine, okay? You can't make a Roth 401k employer match. It just doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is, remember, a Roth 401k means you're paying income taxes on it. All right, so here's the logistics of it. A Roth 401k means you're paying income taxes on it. So if your employer matches your Roth 401k with a Roth 401k, that means they're paying you more, right? If they gave you a $1,000 Roth 401k contribution, that would mean they were paying you more. And since everyone faces a different income tax rate, giving you $1,000 would be different than giving someone else $1,000 in their Roth 401k, because that $1,000 has already been taxed. It would just make a logistical nightmare out of it. So for that reason, they just simplify and say only traditional 401k matches. It's just something you need to know.